Hey Shooby Doodlers, how are you doing? I've not been sitting at my desk this week, so as a podcast about a children's author, I haven't really been doing much children's authoring, really. We went away for most of last week, and we started off by going up north to visit my daughter and my new granddaughter. So that actually has a sort of a bearing on being a children's author. When I started out, I was very much writing with my 4 nieces in mind. I remember at the time children's books were still very much kind of boy-led. I'm a boy. Come on, girls, you do what I say. Let's go on an adventure. And the boys would lead the adventures. And the girls would sort of come along and maybe do a bit of cooking and washing and sewing and stuff. And I remember kind of reading things with my niece thinking, this isn't right. I remember somebody one day actually saying to me, oh, you write all these really strong female characters. And it wasn't something I really kind of was conscious of. It's just sort of what I did and, you know, the inspiration I had around me. Things sort of changed quite dramatically in the 90s, and suddenly all the books became pink. You walk into a children's bookshop, blinded by pink, and suddenly there were all these Spice Girls, girl power, and I think that's probably what maybe started it all, the whole girl power thing. And suddenly I found myself writing for boys, which was sort of quite different and sort of doing more sort of adventure-y things and more kind of fun, sort of humorous things, I suppose. But, you know, I had my own children eventually. And so that was great having children around. And as a children's author, it's really useful to have children around because you can sort of see what they do and you're kind of involved in their lives every day. But I was always very conscious not to be kind of one of those authors that follow along behind their children and sweep up the stories behind them and just regurgitate them. And you do come across that every now and then. And I know quite a lot of people, I know often people have said, can I send you my stories? Please don't. And I've said yes. And they've sent me their stories. And I have to come back to them and say, yeah, it's a nice story, but this is a very family story. It's about your children. It's about your experience. And it's not a universal experience for that you can go and buy a book and go, oh, I relate to that. Whereas if it's specifically about little Johnny and what happened at tea time, it's a fun family story, but not got that universal appeal that is going to work in a commercial children's book, for which you want to earn some money because there's a lot of people involved behind it who all need to feed and pay their mortgages. So you need to kind of find something that sells. So I was never one to do that, but my children inspired me, and sort of being around children and being at the school gate and visiting schools as well is really important to just sort of be in that environment and to read stories, see how children react, and it's part of being a children's author. And then sort of my children got older, so I was relying much more on school visits because as your children get older, you kind of move up a grade somehow, and you don't stop sort of being involved in these younger children's lives somehow, and things start getting more serious with exams and university and things. And so visiting schools was really good to keep in touch with children. And then COVID came along, and that just spoiled everything. And quite honestly, I've hardly seen any children since COVID. It's always quite a surprise when you do, and you sort of have a little chat with a child and sort of realise, oh yeah, they still exist. And they're not these characters in my mind that I'm writing these stories for. But I haven't been writing as many stories recently. That's another thing. So COVID came along and kind of put an end to all that. And I've count on the fingers on one hand the number of school visits I've done since COVID. And so it's really, really, really interesting to find myself with a baby in my arms. And not just any baby, this is my granddaughter, and there's that thing that happens, isn't there? You just gaze. So I'm sort of feeling slightly sort of reinvigorated again, thinking, oh, this is all starting again. And and I've got a whole new life to follow and be involved in. And she has cousins, and I think we're planning to move closer to my daughter. So I think we'll probably be a bit more involved in the cousins' lives as well. So I'll sort of see how they're growing up. Which sort of makes me think of this book that I'm listening to at the moment, which is called Wise Animals: How Technology Has Made Us What We Are. It's just my kind of thing, being the geeky kind of person I am. It's by Tom Chatfield, who I first came across on a Society of Authors podcast. We were talking about the effect of AI on the publishing business, and lots of people on this webcast. You've got the chat down the side, and they're all anti AI, and they're very angry and very worried. And Tom Chatfield seemed to be quite calm about the whole thing. I thought, oh, he's an interesting character. Anyway, I heard him talking last week on the radio about this book of his. I'll put links to it down below. And I was very taken by one thing that he said, which is, in all the worry of this, the singularity, this technology coming together and sort of taking over and us being redundant, he said the one thing that we have that technology hasn't and will not have, probably, most likely, if it does, we're really done for, is love. And that's what that thing is. You know, you meet your grandchild and it's like, oh, and it's just there. There's something, you're just immediately in love with this little thing. And you want the best for them, you want to look after them, and you want to care for them. And I remember my daughter, the day she sort of came home with this little bundle, looked absolutely like stunned. She's stunned anyway from giving birth and everything, but sort of stunned. And I remember it too, that day, holding my daughter in my arms, of this incredible responsibility. Whoa, suddenly this is the real thing, and you got to look after this child for quite some time. And machines aren't interested in that. They're not interested in investing all that time and effort and shouting and screaming and cooking and washing clothes and teaching and all the things that you have to give to a child to bring them. There's another interesting idea of his. Well, he quotes lots of other people, so I'm quoting him, quoting other people. But bringing a child into this century from Stone Age times. So basically, a child, when it's born, is a Stone Age child. And what we do is we teach them and nurture them into this modern world. And they sort of suck it all in and think, oh, well, let's do this with it. They go off and do amazing new things with it. And we'll be going, I don't know about that. Like our parents were saying about what we did when we were able to sort of go out into the world and do our own thing. And they will then have to bring their child on even further than we have done. But it's love is the thing that drives parents, teachers, everyone on to bring on this new generation. And I think the further away you get away from children's lives, and in this civilization we live in, we are very separate. Whereas if you live in a tribal village situation, children are everywhere, and you're looking after your nephews and nieces. Everybody's looking after everybody's children, and children are much more involved in your lives. They're much more separate in our civilization, and it's very easy to forget they're there, and it's very easy to think, oh well, they'll just grow up and become human beings. But the effort has to be put in, and the love has to be put in to bringing up the nation's children, the world's children, to become adept in the world that they're introduced to, but also able then to shape that world into something better and to keep moving forward. And I think I always sort of I know my mum always used to say, "Oh, isn't it terrible? So, the end of the world is coming." I said, "No, no, no, don't worry. We will think of something. Just it might be in the nick of time, but we will think of something." And that's what humans are good at. It's that bringing children on to the point where they are self-propelled within this world and comfortable with the technologies and everything, but still bright and inventive enough to think this is wrong, that's wrong. We need to fix that and to change things for the better and to keep making new and better as we go along. That's probably all a bit garbled. What else have we done this week? We went to the Abba concert, with the holograms and things, which was really interesting. I of course was mostly interested in sort of the technology, so I was looking around saying, how do they do that? How do they do that? I wouldn't say my wife is a massive ABBA fan, but as soon as Dancing Queen comes on, she's on the floor. And if you don't know about Abba Voyage, ABBA came together and they recorded all the music for it. Then actors sort of played the parts of the singing, the dancing and the performing with motion sensor capture stuff on them. And then they created computer generated avatars, which then appear on the stage. And when the lights went down, the sense of anticipation, and then it's like, oh, they start coming up from the floor, and it's just so well done. You think, oh my God, it's them. But then there are little sort of chinks in the armor as time goes on. I think the first thing is when they project one of these avatars up quite large, and you go, oh my goodness, the hair is so good. This is all computer generated. The hair is so good. The skin texture is fantastic, and this and that. I wasn't quite convinced by the mouths and the eyes. There was no life in the eyes. And I kept being reminded of when my daughter used to play The Sims. These characters walking around a room and they're singing and they're dancing, and yeah, I was very aware of them being robots, or avatars. The weird thing is, just as you're about to give in and think, oh, let's treat this as an ABBA concert, then suddenly there's a live band on the stage. The lights come up and who are these people? Immediately, I thought, well, they're just miming, they're acting at it. But no, they were a live band. And so there were the voices of ABBA singing, but with this live band playing along, obviously to a click track, and backing singers who I felt were just overdoing it. They were sort of going, I'm here too. Look over here. Look. They wanted to be part of this big ABBA thing, but no, they should. I go away. They kind of broke the fourth wall thing and sort of reality. I think maybe they're trying to make it seem like reality, but it didn't work for me. That made suddenly it turned the screen into a 2D screen, and ABBA became 2D because there were these live people on the stage. What was very clever is that the arena is built specifically for the show. It's on a piece of wasteland that's probably going to become a skyscraper or something. You mentioned a shopping centre right next to a railway station, so it's great for transport, and they've got a 2 or 3 year lease or something, and the whole stadium can be taken down and transported somewhere else. It's a pop-up show, but what is so clever about it is that it fills your whole field of vision. There are things that come out of the screen and carry on out and around behind you and up and above. And so it's a bit like wearing VR glasses in a way, in that the whole of your field of vision is taken up with lighting effects and things happening. And so, and all of that then focuses you on the characters of ABBA up on the screen. And it's not a hologram. It is just a 2D projection. But they do very clever things with it, and it's so sharp, and it's to do with the timing. And of course, the more of an ABBA fan you are, the more you want to believe it. And so I'm sure the ABBA fans who've all turned up in their sparkly tops, and there were quite a few, and they were in there dancing, I'm sure they came away thinking, I have been to an ABBA concert in 1979, and I'm sure they go away and believe it, and in their heads, that's it. And then there are some in the middle who have just come because, yeah, well, it's a great thing to come and see, and it's Abba, and I love Dancing Queen and stuff like that, a bit like my wife. And but at the same time, she comes away going, how did they do that? What, who, what? So she knows it's not the real thing. So she hasn't been completely taken in by it and hasn't completely given herself to it, should I say. And then there are people like me going, oh, I see. That's the thing coming down there. And then, and that's LinkedIn. So I'm sort of analysing the show as it were, but that's the way I am. And every now and then I would just give myself into it, and it's like, wow, fantastic. And then something would just catch my eye, and I go, how do they do that? And there's something up there. What are they going to use that for? Oh, it's coming to. Oh, right, that's just me. And then it was Easter week, which means the whole of the country goes off, gets into cars and goes off to meet family and stuff like that. So we got stuck in a traffic jam. But it wasn't too bad because there was this great radio show with two very old DJs on who were DJs on the pirate radio ships. So when I was, 10 or something like that, and there were these two, the final two were Radio London and Radio Caroline. And they were, it was all to do with the broadcasting laws in the UK. And only the BBC was allowed to broadcast. So these pirate radios started up, and they got away with it by broadcasting from ships just outside the 3-mile limit. And so we used to listen to Radio London. That was the one we wanted. We used to, wonderful Radio London. And so we would listen to Radio London. And then it had to give in. It sort of stopped. And I remember we listened to the very last broadcast, and it was, they're saying bye-bye, it's been lovely having you and everything. And guess you're all going over to Radio Caroline. And we did. It all just went silent. We all go to Radio London. Click over to wonderful Radio Caroline. So we were big Radio Caroline fans. It was great listening to these two old duffers, Tony Blackburn and Johnny Walker, who were really bouncing off each other. It was a really great show. Talking and reminiscing about their time on the pirate radio ships back in the 1960s. So that made the journey a lot better, but it was quite a long one trying to get home after a long week away. And now that I've recorded this, I need to get down and start writing and being a children's author again. So thanks for watching. Make sure you are subscribed. Click down there somewhere, and I'll see you next time. If you've got ideas for things you'd like me to talk about, put them in the comments box below. You take care now. Bye-bye.